Okay. Do. Okay, so we now have YouTube chats are enabled. Ooh. I'm going to press the enter key now. Actually, Piha or Ekin, are you there? No, he's there. He's just. Can you do me a favour? Can you open the web chat, and can you see any messages that were there before you joined? Cool. In that case, I'm going to entrust you with something of great responsibility. Nope. Cool. So one of the things that's always been annoying for me is how difficult it is to get a word in edgeways when two people are like talking continuously. We're not going there today. Pardon? Oh. Cheers. Oh. Cheers. Ah, two cameras. Yeah. How much Dan can you take it on a Saturday evening? Right. um, yeah, (6:30) sounds about right. I couldn't figure out how to set it the time accurately. I just did the maths in my head and it was close enough. Okay, cool. Let's do. I've got a plugin that's meant to do it, but one of the issues with only having a big screen far away is I couldn't see the actual place to put the number in, but I knew how to get back to the timing countdown one. Okay. What else do I need to do? I need to do studio mode. Yeah. So you piping your stuff through OBS as well? Yeah. Yeah, I will, just for the sake of having done it. See how many people turn up, because obviously if it's... Where's the remove user from room? Let's not discuss that. Let me just get my notes up and I'll start talking more structured. Don't need that, don't need that. Nope, I do need that. Oh, hang on, I didn't get that one. Oh. You have to be logged, have to have set a name to get the sounds. Yeah, it's very secure. Not that one. Not that one. Alright. So it's an OBS browser window. What you do is you open up the YouTube live stream, you do the pop out the chat, grab the URL, and then there's a site I can link to you when I find it later, that will provide some custom CSS or CSS for making it look not terrible. I don't know, it might be newish. What phone? You might need to just upgrade. Probably, I can't even. 25.08. Ob Studio 25.0.8. Yeah. So should I'll talk. I'll do OBS tech support another time. What do you just OBS? Beg your pardon? Do I want to add more sounds? I am trying to get my niece into programming, and there might be some fart noises coming at some point. What I'd really like actually is to be able to integrate it with Whereby, or Who's in a Room for Whereby, because as you know, one of the nice things about Whereby is how easy it is for people to join a room without having to jump through hoops. So what I want to be able to do is just be able to query the Whereby API and say, is this person in this room right now speaking? And if they are, allow them access. If not, don't allow them access, rather than having to manage two separate things, just because it'd be a bit of a nightmare otherwise. Okay, let me get my notes on screen. No, this is a aesthetic decision. I'm not going to do music almost ever. and that's on your reasonably decent machine. That is a very dangerous drinking game. Right, I need to get more booze for this. Well, yeah, yeah. For the record, there's nothing wrong with drinking a glass of milk. Though I've been trying to drink a bit less alcohol just for health reasons more than anything else, but I realise I'm not so much addicted to booze, but I am addicted to calories in liquid form. So just I was like, oh, nice pint of milk and a chocolate bar, that'll be a nice snack. Well, they melt, so they dissolve in the milk, so I'm going to count it. It's not too bad, but if you're drinking a pint of it, it's not too good. Okay, and I've just remembered I've forgotten to do something. Great. Oh, lovely. Okay, so the thing I forgot to do was set up my browser to capture whereby output, which is a bit of a problem, seeing as I was just about to turn that, well, not on, but to test if I could turn it on. What the? Beg your pardon? The company is based in Norway, or at least the founders are. Okay, I'm gonna practice going live or putting a whereby into the stream. There is a small chance there will be some feedback when I click this, so prepare for seeing yourselves on the internet, and also muting your computer. Okay, so we click. Okay, let's not. Actually, no. Let's deliberately screw this up. What's that look like? That looks awesome. That's absolutely perfect. Yeah. So what I need to do now is go here, properties, deactivate, and then I can turn my camera off and do this camera Yeah. Hey. And now. Ah, yes, the stream's black. Okay, so that's not full screen. Command. Okay, okay, we have the technology. That's really quite complicated. Okay, so I go back to here. Yeah, it's not so much. I don't think it's quite 45 seconds, but it's certainly more than I would prefer. Anyway, let's do OBS camera back. Gets a little bit crazy. Yeah. So no, we're definitely not doing that. We're not. No, no. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell. What up? It's your boy. Okay. You may not. Okay. I'm hitting the button on tweeting about this to give okay, I'm tweeting that we're going live because maybe we'll get at least one viewer, though even if we don't, that'd be even better. Yes, I think we should have a conversation about the youth of today and their addiction to the internet, and how they'll pretty much watch anything and be unable to stop themselves, but we can do that another time. Okay, I'm going to go back to here, get confused again, turn my face off because that's enough for my thing. Oops, turn the YouTube chat. So, chat. Probably all bots. Okay. Grapes are good. Yeah, I definitely need more monitors to do this. I need to have the live panel, the sound panel, and the chat. Oh, and and my notes of what I'm meant to be doing all on the screen at once, and that's just not going to happen. No, if you can do me a favour, if you see anything that I should respond to in the YouTube chats, so the YouTube chat, or in particular anything that needs to be turned off, ping the sideband buttons. Yeah. Yes. And I probably forgot to do this, so I need to practice. Oh, this is I've just realised that the audio from Whereby is not being sent to the screen, as we are a chance of feedback here. Can somebody say something, please? Or port. That's perfect, absolutely perfect. I'm hoping people in the stream heard that also.
What happened there?
But I could see that the... I'm getting feedback from somebody. Are we still getting feedback? Let's just check some more.
Where are you announcing?
Just on my Twitter.
You want me to retweet it?
I will.
Sure. Sure, why not? What's the worst that can happen?
I don't have that many followers.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, there we go. Bum, bum, bum.
Dan, quick question. What is 19 times 45?
Pardon? I beg your pardon, Peter?
19 times 45 is 855.
You're just trying to get him to say, aren't you?
Yeah.
Let's take that. This one is it?
Streaming experiment, online social awkward media thing. Media thing. Yeah, I think so.
My Twitter isn't reloading, it's being slow.
Any comments?
Come join us.
Okay, I've forgotten to do some stuff. So in the last minute or so, I was very quickly do the code of conduct. Pretty much same as room 11 of... Actually, let's change my camera.
This is it, I guess. Yeah?
Yeah, good.
Let's see.
Okay, well that didn't work. Yeah, same as room 11, that the
Hey,
aim...
I heard an Stop. That was clearly an I heard it.
Okay.
The aims of this room are socialising, experimenting with better forms
so smashed.
of better forms of online meetup, and very distant third distributing info about PHP. The only difference with room 11 code of conduct
Are you
is...
dictating this or actually typing it?
I'm saying it to you, so you're meant to be listening. I think it's the general idea, but if you want to tune me out, that's fine also. I'm just trying to get in the practice of saying it, and I forgot to say it
Fair
earlier.
enough.
The only difference to room 11 is that...
I thought you were actually writing it down for Twitter.
Nah, well, that's far too much effort. The only difference to room 11 is people do need to... Hang on.
Yes.
Cheers.
There we go.
Whew, that's some strong coffee. This is a coffee mug, therefore anything inside it is coffee.
Oh, it's lemon one. Nice.
But it's a bit too strong right there, so
It's a West coffee mug.
it is. That's in the shop? No. Okay, so let's turn me off that, and I will mute you all for the moment so you won't be on the stream hopefully. So let's start. I'm not a streamer. I'm not going to do the high energy streaming start of trying to really work up the energy of everybody in the room. The aim, sorry, there's an for you, Peter. This is an experiment in having slightly better meetups online. Everyone has probably noticed that the pandemic is getting in the way of doing regular meetups. I'm an introvert and an extrovert. I very much like going to meet people, but once a month is just about my limit. But with the pandemic going on, there's pretty much no chance of me attending any meetups for the foreseeable future. My local user group's been running meetups online, but they've just not been quite the same. So this is an experiment to try and have a more social thing happening. So I'll introduce you to the people who are also online in a moment. Just going to say a couple of words about this experiment. This is an experiment. We are very much in the throwing spaghetti at walls and seeing what happens stage of things. It's really not obvious what's going to be a really successful way of holding social events online. So we're just going to be experimenting with a couple of different things. As you may notice, I am quite new to OBS and streaming and trying to put on shows. I'm probably biting off a bit more than I should be chewing for my first go, so quite a few of these experiments might not work just because I'm not quite skilled enough to actually get them to work. Some of them will fail because they'll probably be bad ideas, some of them, and a few of them might succeed. So one of the things that we're trying is separating the streaming side of things from the people talking. So we have a few people online in Whereby who I'll switch back to now, and
Inception again.
yep, I need to fiddle with my video camera settings. Oops. Let's. Well, there we go. So today we've got Tiffany from Room 11 and Derek from Room 11 and Xdebug. Hopefully your audio is getting through to the live stream as well. Do you guys want to say hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Well, hello there.
Hello there.
And Peter and Egan are here as well.
How's it going?
Is everyone enjoying the lockdown? Or what?
No,
I'm
not
bored.
at all. I mean,
Actually,
work is
quite
fine,
good.
but I just want to hang out with. I would like to hang out with people in real life again.
Yes, I don't miss that many things, but I do miss going and being able to sit in a pub and not think that it's going to be that much of a threat to my
The last-
existence.
The last time I've been in a pub was actually with you, Dan,
Wow.
in Bristol, at when we had the Southwest User Group.
Yep. Just as the whole stuff was starting.
Yeah. When I was back on the train with lots of people on the Cheltenham Festival,
Ah,
getting all COVIDed up.
were you ill after that?
Yes, I think so actually.
Cool.
I think I got it very, very mildly back then. But I don't know for sure. I have never had a test.
Fair enough.
Has your sense of smell and taste gone?
Well, I don't have a sense of smell to begin with, so that's not a difference for me. But I know I didn't lose my sense of taste. Well, I mean, tasting food stuff. Sense of taste, other things we can argue about at some other point. But
In my notes it says that we're allowing people to promote their open source stuff. Derek, I believe you've got something happening on Monday?
well, every Monday at 3:30 p.m. BST, which is 2:30 p.m. UTC, I do a Xdebug related stream. And coming Monday, I will be introducing Xdebug Cloud for the first time.
Ooh.
Scary. Yes, I have a demo. Yay.
What does
Yeah,
it look
that's
like?
going on.
You'll have to
What
tune.
What does cloud
What
look
does it look like?
Yeah, what does it do
Well,
in terms of normal
well,
versus normal?
you have to join me on Monday
Yes. You have to wait.
then.
Can't.
No spoilers, no spoilers.
Fair enough.
The idea is to make setting up debugging connections easier. That's the idea behind it.
Sounds like a good idea. Definitely.
Yep, I agree. And the last month I've been spending lots of time making XDebug go much faster than it is. And in the next week or two or so, I will be having an article out explaining what I've done and some benchmarks for it. So that'd be interesting to see what people think about that too.
That's cool.
We probably ought to measure how many times I screw something up on this first one, and we're definitely off to first major screw up. I have managed to not hit the start recording button, so although the stream's going out, it's not being recorded in high quality, and apparently I've broken something and I can't even press the start recording button, so oh well.
Hey, it is better than doing a stream and then only after 15 minutes and realizing that you're still unmuted. That you're still muted.
Cool. So, rough plan for this evening is I'm going to say a few words about audio and video setups for Talking Online. Derek might say a few words on a subject of his choosing, and then we might talk about how awesome PHP 8 is going to be and what
I was thinking of. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to turn you people off for a moment. I'm going to click here. Yeah, so they can still see you, but I don't think they can hear you. So I do that. Time zones are really, yeah, time zones are way too difficult for me to cope with, so that's my excuse.
I mean, we've got the time zone expert here.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do whether you start things on time or not.
Well,
You don't have to be a time zone expert to be on time.
true.
Ooh, there we go.
Right, you got the slides up?
Yeah, I got my slides up and have the picture on. Let me hopefully turn that off. Okay, so hopefully now only people on the stream can only hear me and my marvelous voice. So here you go. I will have to explain to people not hearing the funny noises. There is a tool for people chatting to send funny noises in my direction and distracting me, and they are taking full advantage of it. And I now need to press a button. And I have managed to lose the button I need to press. There we go, interact. And I can now actually interact with my slides, which makes it a whole load better. So this is yeah, let's go anyway. So possibly this is the most passive aggressive talk I could start off with. It's how to set up your microphone and video camera in a way that is pleasant for other people to interact with. So when people are listening to you or looking at you, it's a pleasant experience. Why am I giving this talk? my first career was in the video games industry, where making video games for PlayStation 1, where we had a QA department which employed young men who quite frequently hadn't had a job before and hadn't lived away from home before, and this was the first time that they were living away from home, and they hadn't quite gotten used to the way that showering or washing was their responsibility and something that they needed to do frequently. Before, they'd been living with their parents, and their parents had to remind them that it was time for them to have a shower. So one of the things the QA manager had to do was have a chat with some of these young blokes and tell them, you're quite smelly, you need to shower more than once a week, preferably many more times than once a week, to not smell and not be unpleasant for your colleagues to work with. And this is somewhat similar to audio and video setups for people talking online. No one really wants to go around criticizing other people for having bad setups, but I've seen quite a few people just not do very basic things that make their setup be pleasant for other people to experience. And unless somebody tells you you need to do it, this is something you need to take responsibility for yourself, to check your setup and make sure it's good enough for other people to enjoy interacting with you. So first thing is headphones. Obviously not always possible, but when you've got more than a couple of people talking at once, it's really easy to get feedback going in a loop around multiple people. And feedback gets really annoying really quickly. If at all possible, putting your headphones in means that there's no feedback, no one's going to get deafened by sound reverberating, and it's a generally much more pleasant experience for everybody. Second thing that's kind of obvious but people forget to do is to mute themselves. This is something people need to get into practice of, particularly if you're ever going to step away from your computer for any length of time. I've been in a couple of meetings where somebody's been in an office, they've joined a conference call, they've stepped away from their computer, and then a fire alarm has gone off nearby, and it just completely disrupts the whole of the conference call, because not every piece of software has the ability to mute individual people, and even if the people do have the capability of doing that, it still takes a few minutes to figure out where the sound's coming from, who needs to be muted, and just breaks up the flow of the meeting. Just getting into the practice of, if you're going to be away from your computer for more than 1 second, put yourself onto mute, is a great thing to get into. Microphones. Every webcam has a microphone. A lot of them aren't that good, particularly if your webcam's more than a foot or so away from you, or if you're in a room that's quite echoey. Although the sound is intelligible, there's a big difference between being able to hear what somebody's saying and being able to hear easily what somebody's saying. I'm using a very small lavalier microphone. They're available for about £15 on Amazon. They don't cost that much. Getting the microphone close to your mouth dramatically improves the quality of the audio for everyone listening. But one mistake people do is tweaking their microphone settings to be really loud. So if you look online, particularly on YouTube, of how to set up your microphone, a lot of the guides out there are setting up microphones for streamers, and this is a mistake people make of trying to make their microphones sound like the streamer sound, of really booming and really bassy. There's a difference between clarity and pleasant sound, and if I'd done a bit more research I would have looked something up before giving this talk. Earlier today I remembered that during World War II my grandfather was employed by the post office, which doesn't sound that impressive, but at the time the British post office was involved with long range communication, like managing the undersea telephone lines, and one of the projects he was involved with was trying to figure out how people in tanks could talk to each other through their radio headsets. So the problem is tanks in general are quite loud, and obviously in battles you've got quite loud explosions going on, so you've got the tank crew sitting in different compartments trying to talk to each other, and the issue is the inside of a tank is very, very loud. If you just turned the volume of their headsets up to be louder than the ambient sound, all you'd end up doing is deafening the tank crew. What my grandfather worked on was just boosting a few particular frequencies that people actually need to pick out what other people are saying. But as I said, I forgot to find where his work was. I will try and find it for future versions of this talk, and it's also just an interesting family thing to know about. But yeah, in general, just don't overtune your microphone. A natural sound that's clear to hear is much easier to listen to than a streamer style booming setup. And it's at this point that I remember that I've forgotten to turn my lights on. Well done, Dan. In general, the more lighting the better. It's not always... the amount of lighting you need depends on the quality of video camera you're using. I'm using a Panasonic proper video camera that's pretty decent at lower light conditions, though I'm pretty sure it'd be better with my lights on. If your room is at all dark, or if you don't have a light in front of you, you can buy LED lighting panels that will make it much easier to see you, and the easier it is to see you, it makes it a more pleasant experience for people talking to you online. And the other thing, there's a mistake people make when trying to evaluate their setup is humans use their eyes to communicate a lot more than you might imagine. This is a picture of Google Glass. This was a piece of technology that launched, I think, about 10 years ago, that failed entirely, not because of any technical reasons, or no big technical reasons. The issue was that it put a screen in front of somebody's eye, and it made it really, really creepy talking to them. Just having something in front of your eye is distracting enough, but then having them look off to the side during conversation, just very, very bad experience. Humans' eyesight is actually pretty bad compared to most other animals. People are either short-sighted or long-sighted, but it doesn't seem to have affected human progress that much. And I think one of the reasons for this is that it's just been a very, very, very long time since humans actually needed their eyesight to be good. It's impossible to know exactly how long ago it was that people started using their eyes more for communication rather than having it being solely a survival tool of being able to spot predators. But people, I have whites in my eyes, everyone has whites in their eyes, and at some point in a few million years ago, people started using the whites of their eyes to be able to communicate with each other. And I think a lot of people don't have good video camera setups where they'll have their video camera far too close to their face or off to the side when they're talking to people. For me, there's two setups that are good. Having the video camera directly in front so that you can look at the video camera when you're talking at somebody, or if you're going to be looking down at a screen, this is also fine as well. It's clear that I'm looking at a screen right now. I'm not pretending to half look at you. Quite a few of the talks I've seen are where people have their slides just off to the side. It has been a bad experience where you can see enough of the face to make eye contact, but not enough of the face to really read their emotion. So if you can, face to the camera or off to the side, but no talking like this, just kind of half onto the camera but not actually looking people directly, so it's just way too freaky. That's that. And this is something a lot of people have difficulty with. I've seen some people say that people should always turn video cameras on when they're talking online. I actually find this quite difficult, particularly when I'm going through some code with somebody and I know that I'm going to be staring at lines of code. I actually find it quite burdensome to have a video camera there looking at me when I know that I'm going to be thinking very deeply. It's hard to say exactly why, but it takes an emotional toll, and I'd say that it doubles the rate at which I get tired during video calls. If I can have just audio rather than having to have both audio and camera on as well, I'm much more able to chat for long periods of time, just because it's less wearying for me. So I talked earlier about what camera people should have. I'm using, as I said, a Panasonic video camera. There's this HDMI capture card. That's the thing that I've plugged the video camera into. These used to cost about £150. Somehow somebody in China's started selling them for less than £10 delivered. And this HDMI capture card seems to work perfectly. It's just plugged it in and it's worked absolutely flawlessly, which is pleasant. If you don't have a really good, if you don't have a good webcam, you can use your phone camera. There's multiple pieces of software that you can use to use your phone as a webcam. I tried out Arian, which works on iOS devices. I'm sure there's tens, if not hundreds, of different pieces of software that will do this. If your web camera is at all ropey or blurry, I would recommend just trying one of these out, recording a short piece of video and comparing the quality. Although if you're not going to be streaming, you don't need the quality to be that high. There's like a minimum level of acceptable quality, and pretty much all cameras in phones that have been sold in the past 5 years will easily be at a very good quality for using as a web camera. One piece of caution: I looked at using my DSLR camera for this broadcast. Although the picture quality is absolutely amazing, it just doesn't work that well. The camera overheated pretty quickly after like 20 minutes of video. There's a thing where cameras seem to have a lot, cameras when you're using them for video seem to have a lot of lag on the video stream that they're sending out. I didn't know this was a thing. I think there's like a frame or two delay on this video camera, which is not too noticeable. For the Canon 5D Mark III I have, the lag was about a third of a second, which is just an incredible amount of lag, and it was distracting me even. It's when the video is out of sync with the audio, it's just a horrible experience. And the other thing that was slightly weird was that the picture quality was just slightly too detailed really for what's needed. There's like a minimum quality which is needed, but then you really don't need to see that much detail of this face. And that's it. So I will now attempt to put the room back onto display, whereby properties, deactivate, okay. And you're all very quiet during that, so either...
Well, I had muted myself as per your own advice.
Fantastic.
Right.
Cool.
Exactly.
Apologies if that was far too
We were
passive
trying to
aggressive.
be polite.
But we're making faces at each other.
Faces, yeah, sure. We were being silent, I think.
That's the main
Even
thing.
did a quick elephant.
Cool. Yes, streaming and presenting a show and talking all at the same time is quite difficult. Does anybody have any questions they would like to direct my way?
No, but I have many opinions.
I would love to hear some of your opinions. What's your opinions, Derek?
Oh no, I've been doing remote work for, well, 10 years or something now, and there's a few things that it really makes a lot of sense to do, which is always get a headset. I mean, because the sound that comes out of your speakers is always going to show up at your mic unless you have a proper one. Always happens. And there's nothing worse than having a meeting for an hour at the end of your day when people in California have just woken up, full of energy, and you just need to listen to an hour and a half of dirge. And then on top of that, having the bad audio quality is just soul destroying, right? And it is a really difficult problem to solve, especially if you have 8 hours or 9 hours time difference. It's a lot easier, it's like 6 hours. But having, don't knock on the table, don't clap, don't clink, don't rustle your food if you're having to eat at the same time you're having meetings. It's such an important thing to do because it takes so much extra effort of doing your meetings.
Yeah. Do any of the companies that you've had contact with have somebody who's like the official checker for audio quality and general remote setups? Because there seems like to be like it's a thing that people don't. You're not going to be able to get right first time just from guessing. It's something that you need to be taught how to do. But I've never
Yeah, I mean it does require some experimentation.
Yeah.
And I think at some point we settled in that if we're doing a meeting where some people are remote, everybody acts like it is remote and sits in our own rooms. Instead of 20 people, or but we were a few then, like say 12 people in a room, and then me and one other person remote. That does not work.
No.
Of course, that was a few years ago. Now, of course, everybody's working from home, and that is a very different thing. But yeah, we never really had anything written down up until the last moments, just before I actually ended up leaving, for different reasons. But it's a tricky thing to do, right? And I mean, you really need to set yourself into the mindset is that, I mean, verbal cues don't really work. And as you mentioned yourself, you created a soundboard for being able to raise a question.
Yeah.
And by if you want to say something I don't know until you raise your hand or you start talking, but if you do, then whatever video conferencing system you use might cut out somebody else that is currently talking. So it's a really difficult thing to do that. And technology isn't quite there to be as intelligent as us people are sitting in a room, because we can pick up on those verbal cues, whereas the camera here cannot.
You say that, but it's been a problem that one of the couple of my last places that I've worked, where people, even sitting inside the same room, haven't been able to pick up verbal cues or body language cues. I think it is going to be more difficult online. I think it's something that people need to talk about and practice getting better at.
Yeah, it's a new skill that you need to learn, right?
Yeah.
It isn't something that you just, I mean, people don't usually interact like this with this virtual person on the screen somewhere else. But of course, it makes it a lot easier to suddenly be somewhere else. To be somewhere else.
Yes, definitely.
Makes remote work
Because,
easy.
yeah, I mean, Dan and I, we have met before, and I've met George a few times because he hangs out in the London user group here. But there's a few other people in the chat here that I've never met before. I've spoken to, but never met.
Cool. Okay. What is next? Oh, anybody else got any other comments or any other questions?
I have one complaint.
Okay.
I'm really thirsty, and I only heard one single
I'm pretty sure I said at least 10 times in that talk, and I was kicking myself each and every time.
Okay, thank you. I have one thing to tack onto it. You mentioned that you sometimes do not want to bother with the fact that you are on screen, so you kill the video, right?
Yeah.
I see, for me personally, I really like seeing people, even when it's remotely, because there's a lot of body language involved. There's hand gesture involved. That's something that I really miss when I'm working remotely and somebody cut the screen and you only hear their voice. It's really hard to. You're missing some interaction, some key things sometimes.
He's raising a hand.
True, but sometimes you're in a meeting and you don't really need to say anything, and then being able to turn off your screen and your mic and go to the loo or answer the door for a call does make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. For me, the thing is, if it's a meeting where the main thing is going to be people talking to each other and communicating with each other, then, but I'm only going to be looking at a computer screen to see the other people in the meeting, then that I have no problem with a camera for that most of the time. But it's when I'm going to be looking at code and I know that I'm going to be sat completely still, staring at the code, or just like reading back and forth for the next hour or so. Just being able to not have to worry about my body language and not having to look at the other person's body language also. It's just one area of my brain that doesn't need to process information anymore. That's not finished, Derek. Somewhat hilariously, I've just been clearing out the junk in my mum's attic because she just moved, and I just gave my sister back her How to Solve the Rubik's Cube book that's been in storage for 25 years, so I'll try and get that off her for you, Derek.
Everybody should have one. They're great. I can't solve it anymore though, which is a bit sad.
I've
I mean, you
never
do-
been
you
able
lose-
to.
You lose how to solve them when you don't do it for like, I don't know, like, I knew how to solve them like maybe 4 years ago, so I just stopped doing them. So I still can do like maybe I think like the first phase and like the first
Yeah, well,
the edges on the second bit, but like I can't solve the third phase, meaning that like nothing gets solved.
Yeah. I still like doing it, but I'm just rubbish at it.
I mean, it's meant to be a puzzle and to be fun. Well, at some point, but
Fun for whom?
well, for yourself, right? Try to spend
Oh, yes,
time
yes,
and
that's
like. I mean, we don't even see you solving it currently. Like,
Sorry, but it's really awkward to hold it up here.
There we go. Oh, there's another one now.
I'm better.
All the
better
cubes
than
here.
Yeah.
I'll get there at some point.
That's something.
This is on quality streaming, by the
Yeah,
way.
I know.
solving Rubik's Cube live.
See? I got one now. I'm on site. And now
Yeah.
the second one isn't that tricky. I can do that without even looking at it.
Uh-huh.
I've only
Now I
learned
fucked
how
up. Sorry.
to solve the
Famous last words.
one side.
I got one. No, it's okay. Now there's two wrong. The corners are wrong. I used to be pretty good with this, but no longer. Because I have better things to do with my life.
George, can you check the chat, by the way?
Which one?
The whereby chat.
Sure, I can do that.
Nothing in the chat.
Do you wait? On the question, who are you? Should I put my full name or for my username?
Whatever you want to be known as.
Oh, fair enough. Okay.
Cool. If you that's
I can do the sound effects without
Fair enough. That's good to know that we have like a separate channel for.
yeah. So that's a sound effect that gets sent to other people, but hopefully isn't going to the live stream. But who knows? It might be. Oops. And now it's out on the live stream. Oh well. Okay. Derek, do you have something to talk
Yes.
about? What would you like to talk about?
Yes. Oh, I can talk about PHP 8 for a moment if you want.
That would be fantastic. Do you want to?
What is your favorite features in PHP 8?
That's my line.
I've been asked that like when I presented my slides for like a TCM, when I had like the thing, and I think I ended up settling with match because that's pretty useful.
So Match is the one I would like to still have an episode about on the podcast because I don't know how it works.
Well,
I sense an ulterior motive here, Derek.
It's there now.
yeah. So it's Switch, but not quite. In the sense that, so A, the comparisons are strict. B, the syntax is more, instead of having like case whatever, you just put in conditions. So it can be like it can be any expression, if I recall correctly, like on the condition arm, and then what it goes to is like also an expression, but it's like with like the short function like syntax, it can only be one expression, so it can't be multiple. And the last bit is if the condition is not hit, or if none of the conditions are hit and you don't have a default block, then it shows an unmatched sing error. I think I've got them all.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good feature actually. I think one of my favorites is probably.
Let
What
me
am I
just.
going to say? It is not the JIT engine.
Definitely not.
No.
I think it's a great idea. I don't think it's going to give us a lot.
I am trying to
But
work.
there's so many.
I'm trying to work up the courage.
Sorry, one more time.
I'm trying to work up the courage to send an email to internals to ask a few awkward questions, just because that's one of the things.
Like what?
Okay, so first awkward question is what happens when there's a bug in the JIT that is going to affect lots and lots of people. This happened before for a couple of releases ago. There was a generator bug that basically could affect anybody's code, and we don't really have a mechanism in place for pulling releases or just letting people know that there's a big problem with a point release and people should not upgrade to it.
we also don't do hot fixes. Like, because I think like the bug you're talking about, the generator bug, it was like in 7.4.6, right?
Something like that, yeah.
I think it was 4, but whatever, it doesn't matter.
Anyways, but I think like Nikita like literally had solved it like a day or two after.
Yeah.
And then like the problem is because of the release cycle, and then problems like also release managers. Like it would be unfair to them asking us, oh, can you do like a hotfix, like do another patch version just like 2 days after?
Yeah, well, the issue
Well,
is.
it can't be 2 days after because it takes a few days to make all the releases,
Yeah,
to
well,
build
yes.
do all the tests and make the Windows releases, which is a problem that's going to go away for PHP 8 because those are not going to be made by a team that has different ideas about timing issues. Let me put it that way.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I mean, I think it's like also it's like streamlining in some sense the release process because currently like
But it-
like a lot of
it
is
doesn't-
manual, you know?
It doesn't take that much time to make a new release. But
Okay.
but mostly because it's mostly automated but not fully. I mean, the only thing is that, and Sarah has been working on that, is actually getting easier to update the PHP.NET website, which is a bit tricky to do. But I think the biggest issue with the JIT is that there will be bugs in it, but it will only hit at a very unexpected period in time, and then when you run it locally on just a PHP command line script, you won't hit a problem because it's a bug in PHP, but only when the JIT's kicked in. So we potentially have two sources of bugs there.
I mean, so I think like you can like make the JIT ask to JIT everything. So I don't know if the behavior would be different. I mean, we already have that issue where, like, for example, in FPM, when you have like a long-standing issue, which is like, oh, like after 5 hours, then something just crashes. Like that's already happened, and then it's like, how on earth do you debug that? Because you don't
Yeah.
get a test case really easily, because you're not going to run something for 5 hours just to see, oh, does that test fail or not?
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're going to see issues with that in the JIT engine. I think it will be marginally faster, but not. Well, in my opinion, probably not enough to warrant the extra complexity in the engine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the benefit. I mean, I should be excited about, because I do mass with PHP and like annoy my GTAs like to the end of it. But even then, I think the complexity is not maybe worth it. But then I read an article which was, I think, WordPress on like PHP 8 just gets like a 20% performance boost because the old auto loading system got removed.
Oh.
See, there's
Which
a
is
quote from
very-
Rasmus. He says that PHP is really good at running crappy code, and I'm wondering whether that comes into play here as well.
Maybe possible, but I think it was just
I'm not trying to diss on WordPress here because it's amazing and it runs 60% of the web, but it has some there's some legacy code paths in it. Let's put it that way.
I mean, I think
And
one of the problems with WordPress is also the fact that it's not necessarily the core of WordPress, which is like
right,
like entitled by legacy code. Sure, it has some, but it's mostly all like the whole environment and like the plugins and everything, and you need to support every weird behavior there was with it, because otherwise
Yes.
you're breaking stuff.
well, yeah, there is that, right? It's there's quite a lot of what you can call that. Well, you need to support old version. Now, you can argue about whether it's a good thing to support old versions of PHP. In my opinion, I don't think so. You need to be a little bit pragmatic about it. Like for Xdebug, what I try to do is I support whenever a version gets released, like a 2.9, everything that PHP supports, including security fix at that moment, is going to support it for that 2.9 series. But which is a different approach than, for example, PHP unit takes, whereas it doesn't consider PHP version and security releases still as part of supported. And there's other people that, when they write code and release it, it is only going to be supported on the latest version of PHP. I mean, which one? Sorry, you were saying that, Aaron Ecken?
I kind of hinted on him because when he release a library, he usually tag the latest version of PHP on that.
Less maintenance.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
easier for myself.
Agreed for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you release a new library, you can just say, "Well, I just support this version." Like, all
But
the
with a new
latest.
library, I absolutely agree.
Like
Aim for the
makes
latest
most
version
sense.
only.
That makes the most sense. But I think the question becomes is like when you release a new, what is it, not a patch release, but like a Y release in a x.y.z.
Yes.
Then the question becomes, should you, because technically in Semver you can upgrade your dependencies in a minor release. Then the question becomes, should you always upgrade your PHP dependency release with that? Because I know like Marco Pivetta does that a lot.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you should do
And
it.
people,
It makes sense.
and people complained, and people complained a lot. Because what was it? I think it was like last year, like in May or something like that. He was starting using type properties in one of his libraries, and he already tagged it. And people who didn't specify which version of PHP they supported or whatever in the composer.json just got like, well, okay, pull the latest version. And it's like, oh, it needs 7.4, which is not even released yet, and just dies. So I think it depends. Like, there's a balance to be found there, I think.
Yeah. In the end, what everybody should want to do is running on the latest PHP versions, and
At
that
least
isn't
on
only
support
for security aspects. It's good for the environment because every PHP version is faster than the one before, right? Save
And
trees,
possibly more
run the
broken.
latest PHP version, and I think that's a good argument that you can make. I mean, PHP 7 is like two to four times as fast as PHP 5 is, and if you're still running PHP 5, then you're basically as bad as fossil fuel companies, which is not really true, but you can make that argument.
I mean, I think, yeah, especially like the migration from what I've seen from PHP 5.6 to 7.0 is not the hardest if you don't
The royal
use
box.
if you don't use MySQL, like the old MySQL extension. If you use that, then you need to rewrite a bunch of code. But if you use like PDO on MySQLi, then usually the migration went relatively smooth.
Sorry, can you
Wasn't
explain what
7
MySQL is?
Sorry, what?
Can you explain what MySQL is? I don't know what you're talking about.
So, the improved extension, like the very improved extension of the previous MySQL extension, which has like the very weird quirk of needing a real escape function because
Oh, right. One.
I've never used that.
good.
I've used PDO a little bit, and then switched to a more modern database.
Ooh.
Postgres. I'm betting on.
No, I think he's using Mongo, obviously.
Right. True.
Yeah, it's what I would pick for any new project.
Wasn't that a release with fuck tons of opcache problems at the start? Or was that 5.6 the latest? I remember seeing tons of bug reports regarding opcache. Basically, it was entirely broken when it was just released.
Yeah.
It's probably 7.0 because this is when
Yeah.
Opcache got bundled, wasn't it?
So, in terms of JIT, how would you say it? I said JIT.
Yeah, I think.
JIT.
I say JIT.
I say
Okay.
JIT
Good.
as well.
That's basically one of my biggest fears. I guess what's coming, what's up and coming. Like
We saw the same problem. Sorry, we saw the same problem with both preloading and FFI with PHP 7.4.
Yeah.
Indeed.
These features weren't ready. FFI should never have made it directly into PHP 7.4.
I
It
agree.
should have started out as a Pecco extension.
I mean, wasn't it a Pecco extension, but then Dimitri just
No.
decided to
No.
RFC it?
Well, yeah, but maybe in like 2 weeks' time period, so that doesn't really count.
That got really pushed through in a really
Yeah,
retarded way. That was ridiculous.
I think that went too fast.
Yeah.
Too
At
fast.
least-
But preloading,
At least with-
preloading wasn't really useful until PHP 7.4.4. And on Windows, it's still not usable because the way how PHP Engine
Windows
on
allocates
7.4 runs.
stuff. Yeah.
Well,
least-
it's not quite how Windows allocated, but it's a tricky one.
At least with the FFI, it's not. People have to like use it explicitly. It's not. They're not going to accidentally use it. Whereas with the JIT, people are going to be
That's true.
turning it on and encountering
Well,
bugs by accident.
I mean, with FFI,
How
I'm
would
sure
you-
you can make that argument, but like, if a library like technically uses it under the hood, sure you would need it installed, right, on your PHP version. But if a library that you just put in,
Yes, but when you evaluate a library to use in your application, you're going to go, I wonder if I should use this library. I will try this library. Does this library seem to work? Yes, no. You're not going to accidentally
True.
encounter it like that. It's much more of a deliberate decision, whereas both Opcache and JIT, they're things that people are going to have enabled probably by default in production.
Yeah, which
You still need to enable it, right?
yeah, but I mean, I think the problem is like, oh, JIT is like, oh, just-in-time compiler, oh, it should give performance boost and everything. But I mean, like some of the early benchmark, I mean, you did some, Derek, and I think also Benjamin did some. And what turns out is like, you sometimes just get performance degradation.
Yeah, so that there's
Because
I didn't see that.
I mean, I think on Benjamin's one, like depending on which config thing you use, then you get like some performance degradation.
I think
And it turns out it's like you shouldn't just enable it, and you should probably like profile it beforehand.
there's a couple of different cases. There's cases where your code's already quite fast, but it's not doing much work. So like a request comes in, you're pulling a few items from the database, you process that data a little bit, you send the data back. That's not going to see any benefit at all from JIT.
No.
There's cases where you're pulling a huge amount of objects from the database. I think Ben's case pulled 3,000 objects out using Doctrine, so that's going to be doing a huge amount of work. And there's like a very tiny increase in performance, but hardly going to be noticeable.
Marginable, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's the Derek's example where a request comes in and it takes say 10 seconds to process, and with JIT it takes only 6 seconds to process, so 40% faster, which is a huge improvement technically, but it doesn't actually change the paradigm of that request. That request that took 10 seconds originally is still going to take too long to be a user interactive thing. You're still going to need a spinner of waiting for results. So the number of places where the JIT actually improves the performance of somebody's application generally, and also specifically when something is really, really slow in a way that's actually usefully different, is going to be trivial number of cases, unfortunately. I think the other issue for me is that fixing the JIT bugs is just ridiculously difficult. I've looked at a couple of the fixes that have been done, and I don't even understand.
Yeah, I mean,
That's why we have Nikita, right?
yeah, I mean, you have Nikita and you have like Dimitri, but I mean,
So
because
they're not allowed to get in the same vehicle at any point.
yeah,
Exactly.
basically, and also the issue is that like, so because master is now like C99, great new features, and I was type defing so Zenbu to be a normal boolean, and I was hitting an issue with the JIT, which was like segfaulting all over the place, because there must have been one Zenbu which had like multiple valid values, and I could not figure it out because like it before a Zen boolean was type def to like an unsigned char.
Right.
So you could have like 0, 1, 2, 3, which was used in some places, but like on the non-JIT versions, I managed to fix them. But in the JIT, I could not figure out which Zenbu was actually like being the problem. And Nikita gave a look at it, and he was like, "Nah, I don't know where it is. All seems reasonable currently." So I needed to ping Dimitri that he has a look specifically because I could figure it out, like which one it was, nor debug it. Because when I was trying to debug it, you just get like a useless GDB stack trace.
Yeah. Let's continue that conversation another time. Let's talk about PHP 8 a bit more in general, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, Derek, what's your favourite feature? if it's
My favorite.
feature of PHP.
I don't know. There's quite a good look. It's quite a lot of good stuff in it, but I forgot what it is. So maybe I should just check what features I discussed on the PHP Internals News podcast. Because I heard that this is where you get all the latest news about making it into PHP.
Shameless plug.
I have no shame.
You're seeing this.
So union types is pretty good.
Yeah.
I like the constructor property promotion. I think that's good.
Fine.
We now have a mix type, which I think is kind of useful in some cases. What else? We have named arguments, which depends on who you ask, is a great thing or an awful thing. I think the jury is going to be out on that.
I think I think named arguments will make my life quite a bit better in a couple of very specific scenarios.
It makes sense, I think, as part. So a while ago, I spoke with Larry Garfield about doing like object ergonomics, and where we discussed like having data value objects, for example, how you would approach these, and the features that are in PHP 8, which is constructor promotion, as well as having what did I just say?
Named arguments.
Named arguments make that kind of stuff actually almost there, and I think that is a good way of going there without actually adding lots of random features.
Yeah.
It's like there's a little bit more of a coherent thought behind this, which I think is a good thing to have.
Yeah, because all the relevant features was adding like all completely new syntax or like a new object initializer feature, and
Right.
it's kind of hard to plug into the wider language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, the union types are quite a big one. I actually really quite like PHP's type system. I mean, apart from the callable type, which is still a mess. Yes, and I wish I'd gotten around to doing something about it, but hadn't felt up to it in the appropriate time frame. So maybe for 8.1. But for me, there's quite a bit of code in the imagic extension where a union types will make the code be a lot more self-documented, which will be a big relief. Particularly, there's just like a couple of hundred functions where you can either pass in a string or an imagic pixel object, and just being able to properly type those functions will just be a lot nicer than having it be a random mixed variable.
Yeah.
Although mixed,
I messed up my cube
Does
again.
FFI help you?
although mixed is also quite nice.
Then, does FFI help you in any way, shape, or form when it comes to Imagic to move it, to port it at some point? Because I know you're struggling to get more people on board.
I've had a look at it. The short version is no. That it doesn't make that much sense to like completely redo Imagic, seeing as it already exists as an extension. So any work is just small amounts of work. I'm more interested. I think FFI will actually be quite good long term for PHP, but I think there's a few other bits and pieces we need to get in place to go with it. So like we're currently in the PHP ecosystem, there isn't really a way of distributing C code nicely. Like you can't install a library that uses FFI through Composer, can you? I don't. Anybody tried it?
Not me.
Can't you bundle C? Like, can't you just like add your C file with
You
your
would-
library and like reference it? Isn't that like one technique?
No. Well, the thing is, you'd still need to compile the C file on the target system to provide the symbol.
Okay.
When I get more energy, the other piece of the puzzle is getting pickle. Not that pickle, the other pickle. The one that's spelled.
It's a good name, isn't it?
No, that's the worst
Yes.
possible name ever. For anybody listening who's a bit confused, there's two libraries pronounced pickle. One's spelled P-E-C-L, and the other spelled P-I-C-K-L-E.
CKE. Yeah, I mean, I call like the old one, Cradle and Work, like Peckle.
Pack
Thank you.
Fine. There we
Yeah.
go.
That's how I say it.
Yeah.
And then the other one is.
Sorry, it's wrong. It's pickle.
I mean, sure, but at least you can make the distinction more easily.
Right. Yeah.
No, pronounce it the same, just like so many other words in English.
Correct.
Stupid language.
Let's continue with the language discussion another time.
Which language do you want
Yes,
to discuss?
which terrible language we're discussing?
I'm happy to do Dutch or German or Norwegian or Scottish or Welsh.
No, so the thing
There's
is,
French also.
Sorry. Quoi?
until we've got the pieces in place where we can compile C code on people's systems, FFI is going to really struggle to gain acceptance, just because if there's manual steps to installing stuff, people just aren't going to use it. But I think this
Yeah.
is actually like a general problem for PHP, is that it's a bit too hard to use. I mean, like, we've all grown up using it, so we don't see the problems, but the way that you need to touch files in the system directories to install extensions means that it limits how you can install libraries or applications. And obviously with PHP 8 just coming out right now, I've got an elephant in the front of me, I can't see that. With PHP 8 coming out, that it wasn't the right time to talk about it. I do think we need to look at a different way of doing things, either a new SAPI for PHP FPM, but also possibly a new command line executable as well, that doesn't expect extensions to sit only in the system directory.
That's a very difficult thing to do. Doing extensions only per request instead of for the whole process.
Shall I come on your podcast and talk about it?
So one more time, I didn't quite catch that.
Shall we save this as a topic for discussion for a podcast? I'll need to get my notes, have them in front of me to
Okay,
make
that's fine with me.
Yeah, I thought it might be. I need to get my notes in front of me to be able to back up the arguments, because my memory is going and I can't remember all the details off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, like, it would be really nice if you could install extensions through Composer
Yeah.
in some way, but the problem is that Composer packages are specifically made per project. An extension has to be installed per system.
That's
Right.
It's a chicken and egg problem, that you can't use Composer for it because PHP doesn't support it, and nobody's going to want to do the work for PHP because Composer won't support it for a long time either.
Well,
One of the,
I'm not quite sure whether that's true though, because doing this in PHP can be done independently of whether Composer supports it or not. But it is not a trivial thing to do, because the whole idea behind PHP that once you load something, right, you can't really unload it because you don't know whether opcache has cached it, for example,
Yeah.
which means you can't unload it, because if you do, things crash. And this has already caused a problem where people had used opcache and then switch out an extension for a new version, and then because pointers are in different places, it crashes. It's not something you can easily solve.
Right.
Be nice, but it would mean having to restart a PHP process for every request, and that is something you really don't want to do, because that is called CGI.
Yes. What else?
What is your biggest feature, George?
He said match.
He said match. Sorry, I should have paid attention, right?
Yes.
What about you? What about you, Peter?
I mean, I can go with the second one, I suppose. But
No. We've already heard you. Somebody else.
I need to have a think. I need to have a think about that now.
I think for me, the one that's gonna be helping me the most will be constructive promotion, because
Yeah,
I know
same.
for myself it's gonna be get rid of so much boilerplate right now. We just last week we had a meeting about we had a code review. We did a meeting, and if you want to do it proper, we have to do it in a constructor, add parameters, pass the parameters, set the proper properties. I think that's going to be such a nice addition for me personally, because you can just dump it in once and it just works. Besides that, I think union types can help us a lot too. Not we in the current system we are working in right now. It's going to help us in a way that we're going to abuse it, because we don't really have types. We can pass back an elephant, a giraffe, a dot, a character,
Right.
a floating point. There you go. So that's kind of going to help us in the short term, so that we can at least narrow the types. But also in the future, it's going to be definitely useful. Same with mixed in lesser way, I feel like. But there's definitely some usefulness for it. And I know there was a lot of pushback. If it's mixed, why would you even define it? But I think it was even you, Dan, who said it at some point. It's really clear. The intent is there that you actually have a mixed type instead of I forgot to add it or whatever. So I think that will be my shortlist for I would say.
Yeah, for me it's for when upgrading old code, that just going through line by line, adding types to something that didn't have types before, and then having to remember, oh no, I can't do this one, it needs to be mixed. Oh no, I can't do this one, it needs to be mixed. And like having to add, like putting in comments to try and like remember which ones have already been looked at, just turned into a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, I was kind
What
of.
about you, Tiffany? What's your favorite feature?
Probably like the constructor promotion.
That's
Match
all.
might be kind of cool to mess with, but
Yeah, it's something. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's interesting that both of those two don't really add anything new to the language per se, but they just make it a lot less typing. I was wondering, does anybody know of any other like things in PHP that are very bulky to type out that haven't been touched yet?
Well, if we would have
type this
read
dollar
only
sign in
properties.
front of every variable is really, really annoying.
So I can hear either of you.
Okay, I'll
No,
repeat myself.
Go ahead.
Having to type the dollar in front of every variable is really, really annoying.
This is how you troll people. This is how you troll. Peter, a more sensible answer, please.
Honestly, though, when we have proper read-only properties, that would I can see a lot of use cases in my projects where I don't have to stick around with custom getters in this case, where I can just do proper read-only and have immutability. That would help me a lot.
George, that was
So
one of
there-
your RFCs that's you're going to revisit, isn't it?
No, that was
There's an
Matthijs IFC.
There was there's an RSC by André Rumke that does that. The different
yes, that one.
visibility rules.
I still need to read it about. I'm very confused by his proposal when he went it on the mailing list, because so you've got two visibilities, one for read, one for write.
Yeah.
Right.
And seems a
difficult,
bit
yes.
complicated. Yeah, a bit complicated to wrap my head around it.
Yeah. Now, Mate had a RSC that was declined before. That was read only, I think.
Right only?
Yeah.
Write only.
No,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
well the
right
the choice of keyword it was right once, but the choice of keyword was basically put to a vote, because it was like, well, which word is the best? Is it like immutable read ones, like read only, write ones?
But I think he's going to revisit that RFC, and he just didn't have the time, is my understanding. But there's a pretty good plan to get. I can't remember who it was it immutable that was chosen? It wasn't immutable. That one.
It was read only, I think.
I
Yeah.
think so too, yeah.
That was the winner of the secondary vote. But the main complaint about his proposal was that he wasn't handling object cloning. Basically,
Right.
you couldn't clone any immutable object.
Yes.
That was because talking to him, I think what his plan was is first get immutable properties, and then extend that to objects. But because the semantics didn't pan out for the properties, he and he needed to wait 6 months, and he went on to do other stuff on PHP, namely resource to object conversions, which is a pretty neat thing, which is also in PHP
Right.
8.
It's not something I've spoken with anybody about, actually. Do you know whether it's going to impact BC in places?
Sorry, my internet is being very bad, so I didn't hear what you said.
I haven't spoken to anybody about the resource to object conversion. Do you think that will cause quite a lot of BC breaking changes?
Well, some of the resource to object conversions are unused, well, not very used extensions like system shared memory and system shared thing. In the two big ones, which are being converted, there's like curl, but that I would imagine would impact like guzzle and other stuff, and code using custom curl, custom wrappers around curl, which you probably should not do because curl is very hard to understand and it's very easy to shoot yourself in the foot. And then the other one which is going on is OpenSSL, which is not yet merged, but possibly going. I think Matt is going to merge it tonight because he got the approval of Jakub, who's the maintainer of OpenSSL. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly here, but
isn't the biggest one streams?
I think I'm just going to disconnect and reconnect with another internet connection because I'm cutting everything is cutting out. So I'll be back.
I'll be back. Derek.
It seems like Nikita has joined us and Mark Randall.
Ooh.
Hello, say hello to the chat.
Hello to the chat, everybody. This is Mark Randall.
Just to warn you,
You sound very northern today.
you are being streamed to the internet as well as being on the
Yep,
internet.
I see
as
it on
well,
YouTube.
So. And is that
And what
Nikita
is
as well
it?
there? If it is, your microphone's muted. Derek, to answer your question, I don't think it's going to cause a big issue with BC breaks. There's a small issue where I think it is something like when people are like trying to open a stream and they're checking for something to be I'm going to get this wrong way around. They're checking for something to be is resource, and that's going to break. But I think that it's just going to be small fixes of changing it, I think, from is resource to not false for most of those things. So it shouldn't be that big a problem, and hopefully some clever person will include that in one of the upgrade tools. So do you know Rector?
I've heard of Rector.
Rector's a pretty cool tool. What it does is allow people to upgrade from, it applies automatic code changes needed to upgrade and maintain compatibility from one version of PHP to the next. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a migration in place that will hopefully detect those sort of issues and change the code to be correct. Certainly possible.
Yep.
George, have you returned?
Yes, I have returned. Hopefully with a better internet connection using my phone 4G.
Fantastic.
So we'll see how that goes.
Compared to TalkTalk, is it?
Sorry, what?
Your phone is better than TalkTalk, or which?
Well, so my landlord did something very weird. As in, so the property is split into two flats.
Right.
And the Wi-Fi route. So I only have Wi-Fi, and the router is in the other flat.
Okay.
So if there's an issue, I need to tell my neighbor, but he works as in a restaurant, and he leaves at 2 p.m. and comes back at 4 a.m. in the morning or something like that. So
What have you done to your hair, Mark?
Oh.
You're still on mute.
yes,
I believe since you last interviewed me.
Really? Okay, I misremember then.
And it's a bit longer.
What's your favorite PHP 8 feature?
Nice.
Ooh, mine.
Ooh.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to say get debug type because I would have used it about 5 times in the past week, but that's maybe just because it's my RFC. No, I'm looking forward to seeing what I can squeeze out of JIT when that comes on board.
Controversial.
Well, I'm running some microservices using Swool as it is, and pushing a fair few requests through that, upwards of several thousand per core per second. So any additional benefit I can get in terms of performance is actually going to be pretty big for the projects and companies I work for. So fingers crossed, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Okay. Just to note, these Swool people did tweet out a benchmark run by the, I believe it's Phoronix group. Top tip: if you're running benchmarks, make sure the benchmarks actually running correctly, because they announced dramatic performance increases for PHP 8, but they hadn't checked that the process wasn't exiting with an error code. Which,
Well, that will do it.
yes, that will do it.
I mean, best way to get performance: don't run any code.
Yeah.
Troll.
You
mean,
can have
it's
many
true.
sec faults a minute.
Oh well, that's also something which can happen.
Okay, what's next on? Because I'm going to have dinner in about 20 minutes.
So the last thing on the list of things to do this evening is a opportunity for people to either talk about something awesome, technology related, or if they want to ask any questions about something they've heard about, but like they've heard people talking about online and they're wondering if anybody's got any experience and can say yes, this thing is awesome, or no, this thing is not awesome. Either of those two things. I will go first. It's a bit difficult to use, but OBS or OBS Studio is pretty awesome. You don't need to use as many. Yes, Derek's got OBS. There's loads and loads of different things you can do with it, but the nice one is there's a plugin called Virtual Cam, and you can pipe the output of OBS Studio into effectively as a webcam, and then join in whereby Skype or any other chat rooms that expect to have webcam input. And it's just nice being able to just either, if you're giving a talk, have your slides and then your face in the bottom right corner, or for things like this, being able to stream it. It's not that difficult to use. It's a bit fiddly, and you definitely need, I'm learning this evening, you definitely need to have multiple cameras, so multiple monitors to be able to see what you're doing. Otherwise it's a bit tricky. Peter, you said that you were thinking about getting set up with it. When's good?
What was that then?
You said that you were thinking about getting started with OBS Studio.
Well, I definitely gonna need some help though. So at least for stuff like this, gonna be useful. I feel like. But the problem is, I'm working on my laptop. I'm only working on my laptop. So there needs to be another monitor next to it.
Yeah, it does seem to like having a couple of processors it can use for itself as well, rather than having to share.
Yeah, mine at the moment is doing. I have quite a speedy CPU on my laptop, and it's pulling at nearly full speed right now.
Right.
But I'm doing weird stuff with 2 cameras and. things
Yeah,
like that.
you're putting more processing just for the funsies.
Yes.
Double the Derek, double the fun.
Well, I wouldn't know about that, but definitely
Well-
double the Danack.
Can you dev xdebug at twice the speed if we see you twice on stream?
No,
Sadly.
You click
Wow.
Xdebug Cloud though.
you need to speed up the rotation of the Earth root times, and then it might work.
Right.
Shadow clone Derek.
Or invent cloning, maybe that might do the job.
That's a tough sell. So do research, do cloning,
Life's not easy.
just to get better xdebug.
Well, there's a link in the bottom. No, other side. that does the job. If I get to spend more time on it, then it goes faster. That's how that works. But I've been spending quite a lot of time, and in the next week or so, I've mentioned it earlier already. I'll be publishing some benchmark to see what I've managed to do in the last month or so.
So 2 questions about it. When are we going to get recording and playback on it? And how's the cloud coming?
I mean, most of the cloud functionality is there on the Xdebug side and on the daemon side, but it needs supports in IDEs. And I've been talking to PHP Storm about that, so that is on the way, but that will take time. That won't be there in the next 2-3 months. In the meantime, I've worked on a proxy that should do it so that IDs don't have to care. And that I hopefully, I want to sort it out in the next month or so. So my next month, August, but this month, not next month. I want to get that to a point where people can alpha test it. Now the player thing, I'm also been talking to PHP Storm people about, because that definitely needs integration into their ID, but I can't imagine that being ready in the next, that will take a year, I would say. It's a long time, because it's a lot of work, and I need to figure out whether it is worthwhile working on that, because it's a specific use case, and yeah, it's just going to take me a lot of time to write, and I'm prioritizing other things first.
So
it is something I'm interested in.
So what's the deal with the cloud? Is that something that people will be hosting themselves, or you will be hosting, or you will be paying them to host?
No, I'll be hosting it. So it's a hosted service that you can bounce your debugging connections through, so that you don't have to deal with any setup locally.
So
any complicated network setup.
Is that something you'll be offering for free, or you'll be charging a monthly fee for it?
It will not be for free, because it costs me money to run.
Hmm?
And I need to have some income to continue working on Xdebug. Because although GitHub and GitHub sponsors and Patreon are nice, not quite cutting it. But more about that on Monday on my stream at 3:30 BST.
Neat. I'll be on the plane, sadly. So I can't catch that.
On a
but-
plane.
Okay, there will be a recording.
Yeah, I need to fly back to France, but so I'll be going back to the more warm and sunnier France. Although it's been pretty sunny in London currently.
Dude,
And it's been pretty warm too. What are you talking about? Yeah, it's like 38 degrees here today.
Yeah,
I know it's not quite Turkey, but
I think I don't know how south of France is, but it's possibly going to be 35 when I get there. It's going to be toasty.
Okay, we have a question from the chat, which is
ooh,
a novelty. Can someone please explain where they plan to use attributes in their code, or where it's appropriate to use attributes? Who wants
well,
to
the thing
take
is
that?
that I'll take it.
Okay.
Comments with annotations or whatever you want to call them are not parsed by the PHP engine and not validated, so you can't do anything with it logical wise. Which means there's a set of divergent standards for them pretty much. Psalm and PHP. What's the other one?
PHP Sans?
Psalm and PHP Sans. Sorry, that's the one.
Oh,
Are having implemented a slightly different variant of how to parse types, for example. Attributes themselves will allow you the PHP engine to validate these things through reflection. So there's more syntax checking in there that the PHP engine, or while you're writing code, can give you feedback whether you're making mistakes or not, and at the same time also get the validation of the types in that. So that's a good use case for it. Yes, some of these things like type properties and type returns, of course, PHP's already had, which is what doc blocks used to be used for, to give type information, but attributes are more not to give it a type, but rather to convey other information, like how do I serialize this in a database? How do I serialize this object or this property, or what type of property is something that the database uses and things like that. So that's what the main use case for it is.
We only need to settle on the syntax.
Right.
Yes.
That.
But isn't there also
Yeah.
the
That is if it gets in before 8.1 at this point.
yes?
Yeah.
But doesn't that have also the added benefit? Because so when I was like at the coding machine, like David told me that currently opcache is caching all the doc blocks, like the doc comments, because for that for the annotation to be passed by the engine or by whatever reflection or doctrine or whatever, because otherwise with opcache,
Yeah.
it would the comments would get stripped out. So that is possibly also an advantage of having attributes in the language, is that then you
But-
don't need to enable that with opcache, and you can save like memory on that aspect.
But the doc blocks don't work on all the types that you can set attributes on.
True.
You can't set a doc block on parameters in methods, but
Yes.
you can set an attribute on them.
Yes.
So there is a few more places where you can use attributes than you can use doc blocks, because doc blocks, as from I remember, it's either files, methods or functions, classes, and properties. Whereas annotations you can use from a few other places as well.
You see,
Like arguments.
I'm wondering if that difference between where you can and can't use them is going to force PHP down the route of having some kind of indicator, native indicator for type, like we use doc blocks for extensively in statements and such. Now, obviously,
Not following.
so doc blocks extensively used within functions for declaring types for static analysis, in particular things that PHP doesn't do, such as typed arrays.
Generics.
Yeah,
generics,
things like that.
intersections.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if the addition of that and stripping out a lot of doc block comments is going to put further pressure on providing those capabilities natively, because I'm not sure people would want to go down the route, even if it was possible, of using annotations for that rather than something specific for it.
It's a possibility. I mean, these things like the typed arrays and things like that is something that PHP can implement, but it would slow down adding things to an array. So it's a bit of a middle in between, right? I mean, generics would be lovely to have, but this coming up with the right semantics is really, really difficult to do. So yeah, I think you'll see fewer doc blocks because we can already use the types and attributes now to say things you want to store in a column. Doc blocks aren't fully going away yet, but I think at some point they will be used very little for the situation where PHP can't express that syntax or the type information itself. And that will include typed arrays and stuff like that.
Have we heard anything from the PHP Storm guys or maybe Rector about rewriting doc block comments into annotations yet?
I have not.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, on type information specifically, I don't think you want to convert that into an attribute, because at the end of the day, it's like your static analyzer, you're going to run it before you push it to to production or in a CI pipeline, and then it's not going to use opcache for that. Like, it's going to have access to all the file and can just pass it normally to some extent. That's why I would be less worried about type annotation specifically, needing to be moved to an attribute.
No, I don't think we'll get those in attributes at least yet. But I think for existing annotations, things like doctrine things and symphony routing, two things which I would imagine attributes would be used immediately for.
Yes, I think so.
If there's going to be tools available to automatically migrate those over, because I would imagine if they do, that will increase adoption quite significantly versus having to go through and do it by hand. Yeah,
I think it would surprise me if some tools won't be doing it, but I'm not aware of them existing at the moment.
Thomas is on Twitter, so he
I mean,
responds.
it's probably Vector who's going to do that, right? Because they like have specific fixes, or I don't know how they call it, was Vector, for like Laravel and Symfony and Z framework / Laminas, to upgrade your code automatically. I mean, they already released something to automatically upgrade to use constructor promotion syntax. So I imagine if the syntax gets decided, that and the problem is also that like Symfony needs to support attributes for the router, for example, before Vector can then say, oh, we have like something to automatically upgrade it. And
I can
going
also
with how
imagine
Symfony
that.
works.
Sorry.
And going with how Symfony works, I do imagine maybe it will pop up within the 5 release, like in the 5.x, but maybe something for version 6, where they do. I don't know how Symfony does their releases, because they support old age versions.
I was under the impression that Symfony used Doctrine's annotation parser, and pretty much everything uses Doctrine's annotation parser. So I would assume that once that single point is being updated to support both styles, that will probably be 90% of the job done, I would imagine. But we'll have to see how they feel about pushing that out and how it's treated as a dependency in its versioning with other things.
It would also not surprise me if editors or IDs like PHP Storm will also implement some of that functionality.
Thomas, the guy that looks after Vector, he's on Twitter and on GitHub also. He's pretty open to new ideas and planning out features, so I'd suggest dropping him a line if you want to get his notes. I'm just checking, and they added var removal, so that when a property is typed or can be typed, it now removes the doc block comment for the var.
Nice.
As of December last year, so.
Alright, this was fun. I'm going to have to go. We should do this again.
Cool. Are you going to
in a
tweet out
couple
your
of weeks'
dinner?
time.
Are you
No,
gonna
not today. I'm not cooking things from scratch today, so no, Twitter won't see my dinner plan.
Fair enough. Nice to speak to you,
Bye.
Derek. I'll
Kudos, Derek.
speak to you on Monday.
Talk to you soon.
Yep.
Well, I have a nice meal, I suppose. There's no word for
Yes.
that in English, like in French or in
You
German.
can just say bon appetit. I will understand that. That's fine.
I suppose that's something you can say.
Or if you want, you can say eet smakelijk.
Eet
Hey,
smakelijk.
smakelijk.
Is that Dutch?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
is that Norwegian? Okay, Dutch.
Norwegians have no word for it either. They just start eating because they don't want their food to get cold. Alright. Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Cheers.
Mark, I've got a question for you because you use Swirl.
I do.
So how much of a performance like boost do you get like by using an event loop type?
Well, it's not just in my case. It's not just a case of the process itself. It's what else you can do with it. So the main service I run on it is an update loop used for a webcasting client, and previously using PHP FPM and reinitializing every time, using about 40 cores, it could handle something around 8 to 10,000 requests a second. Using Swirl and the benefits that brings, I can now do 10,000 requests per second using 4 cores. So
That's pretty impressive.
so a 10 times increase. Now, obviously, getting rid of the initialization and bootstrapping process is a big thing for that. But also because it's resident in memory, that provides a lot of benefit when there's shared data involved. So there's no serialization or deserialization involved for managing data between requests. So that saves, serialization isn't a big thing when you're just doing it a few times in the context of a page load, but when you're doing it many millions of times per hour, it becomes a drag. So being able to keep things just in memory and treating it as an actual application rather than a shared nothing architecture, it just provides so many new ways of doing things that just aren't present in the standard way of using PHP. The only issue it's got is that with the way that it routes and shares threads, you can't use statics on it. So I know that it's bad to use statics, but they do make things significantly easier at parts, and that just blows up in your face if you try to use them on SWOR, because if it hops threads, you'll find yourself with statics for one thread, and the next time it does a tick, you're on someone else's thread. So I learned that one the hard way. But I think it's got a lot of potential, and I can certainly see something like that being put into PHP proper in the next 5-10 years or so. Maybe even borging SWORL itself. But
What happened to fibers in that regard?
That's a
So,
good question.
could you repeat that,
What
please?
happened to sure? What happened to fibers in that regard?
I'm not actually sure.
I know the author just disappeared,
Yeah.
and also killed the repositories. There's some repository.
I
all
thought
this one?
I thought there was some forks at least that we could just build upon, but nobody.
I'm pretty sure the guy's back online. I'll talk to you about it later.
Oh,
Yeah.
That was actually interesting, because not so much interest in SWORL itself, but the entire way of having async in core. That will be
indeed.
that will be a big feature.
Well, I've also been playing around with, not so much for the web processing, but I've also been playing around with oh god, is it React PHP?
It's React PHP.
And
And
Well,
that
they
chat,
both
I
are.
think, is based on React PHP, if that's the
Yeah.
higher framework.
both are fine for me.
How did you end up with SWORL, Mark?
Sorry?
How did you end up with SWORL? Of the basically the main three choices you have.
I tried a couple of different frameworks. I can't remember for the life of me what the first one was. But when it came down to it, profiling them, I remember SWORL edging it out by about 20% or so, and I think that was mainly because the SWORL's connection handling and its HTTP processing pipeline is all written in C before it finally calls the PHP hooks for the request, versus most other things on the market, which I believe are doing async on the sockets themselves, and then doing the HTTP header parsing and protocol at that level within PHP.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Have you looked
Yeah.
at AMP at all? I've not looked at any of these technologies.
Sorry, no, that's the one. AMP is the second one that I'm using, but I'm using that for asynchronous WebSockets. So not necessarily handling HTTP requests, but it seems like async is going to be, well, native async is going to be one of the major jumps for PHP in its future. It just seems to deliver so much power.
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
Wasn't there like an RFC to, how's it called, like Fiber, which is
Yeah.
That was fibers.
That was fibers,
Yeah.
but didn't
Yeah.
make it there.
I don't know. It seems like the RFC didn't even get to a vote. It was just
Exactly,
like
yeah.
because
Well,
I think
it was.
I'll talk to
people
you
who
guys about
propose-
that later. I think it I think the guy was under a lot of stress, so he decided to not take part in open source for a while, which is probably a very sensible thing to do.
I know Joe was working on something related to threading and then told everyone not to use his library on pain of death.
No. Well, he told people not to use pthreads
That's
Right.
the one.
in
Yeah.
web.
What's the
content.
thread?
And to use start using parallels.
Yeah,
Right. Me too.
and parallels is. Joe says do use that. It does work, but it's a different way of sharing processes, which I don't fully understand either, so can't really comment on it.
We have FFI now, so we can shoot ourselves in the foot, right?
Okay, let me just check the comments again. Doobie-doobie-doo. Cool.
So, while Danack's doing that, you know how I keep on coming up with these great policy RFCs that no one wants to vote for?
Yes.
I'm thinking I think we should propose an RFC where all future decisions are based on who gets voted most on Reddit.
Oh God! Please.
God no. God no.
No! Please
I'm
have
logging out.
mercy.
That was a nice conversation.
I need to start doing more Twitter memes in that case.
The only problem with
mean-
that is the people on Reddit. Not all of them, but a significant proportion of people on Reddit are only there to troll other people on Reddit. And I'm not saying I do that, but I'm also not denying it.
Don't we all at some point?
Yeah.
But the thing as well, I mean, going on the attribute bike shedding syntax train, every Reddit thread about it has like this one comment as to why don't we not deprecate like the shut up operator and just use that? And it's like, no, you can't. It's been explained 20 times. That's the one bit which drives me mad. That's like all the other syntax bike shedding. I don't mind, but that specific thing is like, no.
Well,
Please
and
stop.
they started repeating stuff that was refuted like
Yeah.
in March.
The
Like
com-
they thought they had this great idea, like, why don't we do this? It was like that was already discussed.
But the thing is, like, they don't follow previous threads.
That's the
Basically,
thing.
It's just like they come into this thread like the first time, and then they propose this idea, and then it's like, well, no, it doesn't work because of that.
That's the
And then
thing.
it says like, let's just break all code.
At some point, you need to limit the conversation to people who are up to speed, who have done at least the work needed to get up to speed on the problem, and are willing to do the work in thinking through what a suggestion would entail. So, for example, the ones you said, the people who said, let's just remove the silence operator or error suppression operator, it's so easy to say that, but then you've got to think through, well, how do we put in a deprecation notice for that? How much work would it be to change all the functions in PHP to not use that? And that, even just thinking through what work would be required by itself is a huge amount of work.
It is insane.
Yeah.
Like, because for the coding machine, basically they hired me to work on, because like last year I did like a proof of concept of like, oh, you put in the declare and it promotes all warnings into exceptions. And so it was doing that, but then also adding in some sense capability of like having specific exceptions,
Right.
the specific IO exceptions. And then you realize that there are so many usages of warnings in the standard library. And then also like most of the IO functions, basically it's just like, oh, if the return type is not, if the return value is not 0, then just emit a warning and you get like the error number and the error message from like the C library
Yeah.
by using str error and the errno. So you don't even have like a classification of what types of errors happen. So you need to go through that again, which
Yeah.
is a huge amount of work.
Yes. I think this is going to be a difficult thing to. I would like to see warnings and errors go away at some point.
I think eventually they need to go away completely.
Yeah, it's just we do need to do the work of just mapping out the steps along that journey, and mapping the journey out in a sane way that not having to do 20 person years worth of work to get the feature complete, to be able to do a small amount of work to improve the situation slightly, and then just so that there's not a huge amount of work that gets put up to a yes/no vote, because it'd be terrible if if a team of people spent years and years working on something and people said no.
I mean, I think also one of the issues is how do you make code compatible between the previous version and the version which introduces that? So that's the very hard bit. And at one point I was thinking, it's like, well, maybe one solution is to extend like the error suppression operator to also eat exceptions.
By extend, you mean extinguish, right?
Yeah, well,
So
the,
something.
thing- the, problem, the idea is very bad, but the end goal is that like, if you do that, then you can, because if you do add open, that wouldn't break if you convert the warning to an exception because it would still run. But I don't know if that's a good idea in the end or not.
So something I was playing around with when I first playing with Source was something where it takes an expression and then a map of exception types to values, and it returns if it catches an exception of one of those types, it returns that value. So kind of like going through a match statement, what it would be like with match statements, but matching on the exception type. But realistically, I think either we're going to have to do something with declares, or we're just going to have to come up with a new API.
I think a new API, and something to do with packages, so that some piece of code can say, I want to use this version of the standard file API, so that we can break backwards compatibility things, rather than having to do it all in place. Would be just.
Do you know what would be really handy for packages? Namespaces.
No, they're separate things. When I say
That namespace discussion is never going to end as well. But
when I say packages, I mean being able to pull in different things like the strict mode. If you, instead of adding more and more declares to the top of the file, if you linked in at the top of the file, have a package name, and then have in the code a pre-registered list of packages with the different settings, so like the strict types or which version of the IO library to use, and then everything within that package uses the same settings, it'd be manageable, I think. But I'm probably not going to be able to give a clear overview of this 2 hours into a stream after Stella and Rob. So I will write some of this down at some point.
I think something related to that is, assuming it gets around to it, we've still got the idea of additions on the table, as I understand it. And with those, we are presumably going to put in a fair number of what would be default defines. So if it comes to the point where we have an edition 2021 or 8.1, and it's got things like strict types enabled by default, or
it's never been clear to me. I'm not completely opposed to the idea of this packages, but it's never been clear to me how they'd work or exactly what would be in them. But other than the technical problems or the technical details, I think one of the big issues with editions is that it'd be setting up a lot of drama, because each each different edition would have a different set of arguments around it of, yes, we're going to do this, or no, we're going to do this, and for each of the different decisions, people are going to have strong opinions of whether we should break this bit for this edition or not, or whether this edition should definitely have this other bit. And that, I think this is one of the big issues for the PHP project, is not only do we have a lack of people who have the technical skills to work on things, we don't even really have enough bandwidth to talk about all of the different issues facing the project. So for me, at least, setting up this idea that we're going to every 6 months every 6 months or every year set up a big argument about what's going to be in this edition seems to be the wrong way around. I will write down my thoughts on packages now that PHP 8's just about out the way. I think allowing people to opt into different stuff and combine different small changes, if it's technically feasible, would be a way of getting to the same goals of allowing libraries, including
Didn't we have a straw poll or mini RFC? I don't know, 6-9 months ago, discussing the idea of editions versus.
It was one of those RFCs that was taking place when everybody was very angry and very upset by people's actions. So the results of the RFC don't really give a clear clue of the actual technical merits or project merits.
I don't mean the one with Mr. Z. It was, I believe, it was a discussion between the idea of packages or if we wanted individual declares versus grouping them all into one thing.
I don't remember that one, so I don't think that got to a vote. So
I don't think so. No.
Wasn't that more. So I can't remember. There's been a couple of conversations about things like friends classes. They all blur.
Wasn't there also like Nikita's namespace declare IFC of like where you put a declare which applies to the whole of a namespace, which that's kind of the concept of a package or something like that, I think as well. I'm not exactly sure.
No, I think I've just remembered one of the reasons I don't think namespaces is the right way to do it. The issue with doing it on a namespace level is that it means that you can only say that you've got some code and you want to upgrade it from one setting or one internal library. If that setting applies to everything in a namespace, it means that you either need to upgrade all of the code in the namespace in one go, which is probably too much of a chunk of code to be changing in an application at once, or it means you have to be doing even sillier things like moving code from one namespace to another namespace, either temporarily or permanently, to apply the upgrade.
For libraries, it will work though.
Yeah, for libraries it would work.
Yeah, I think.
But I mean, you could still overwrite it by setting a specific declare again in the file. I imagine that would how it would work. You have like, for example, if you have a strict type, you say it's enable in the whole file, like in the whole namespace or whatever. You could, in an individual file, you could still declare, well, I don't want strict types in this one, for example. I suppose that's something which should work.
I guess. I don't know.
Welcome, Danack one.
Yeah, I just checking. I didn't want to. I didn't want to have the chat open on the screen of the stream just in case people had put inappropriate stuff here. But I've just remembered that.
Wait, hold on.
I just remembered that opening it in a new window doesn't help anything either. So.
We shall call it Danack.
Indeed. Okay, cool. what else are we meant to be doing on this really experimental broadcast? Does
Well,
anybody
I
else?
understand. I understand Mark likes controversial RFCs, right?
Yeah, I like causing arguments.
It's not so much controversial. I actually want to do it for 8, but I totally missed the window because of reasons. There's one thing that really fucking annoys me right now, and it's pretty simple. It's array to string conversion. That's still a thing that exists, and that annoys
Yes,
me to no end.
yes, yes, yeah.
Is
That
there a
makes no
way?
sense.
Say it
Is
again,
there a way?
Say it again.
Is there a way?
What is it?
So array to string
Oh
conversions.
God.
Is there any way? Is there any way forward from this point? Because 8 is missed window for 8. Is there any way forward? Is there any chance of us getting that in 8.1 maybe?
No,
Without too many struggles and bitching on internals.
well, just
I
type
mean-
over it.
Like there could be an argument because it already throws like a warning. You could possibly make an argument to just promote that to a type error, but if that's going to pass, who knows? That's a very because you could say it's a very nonsensical operation to do.
Exactly.
Yes.
Um,
It is.
because also you're getting something very useless out of it. You just get like array capitalized, which is like
It's
How is
even
this
I
worse.
used-
wanted.
Why?
It's even worse because it ends up in a database and you notice like a month later, what the fuck am I looking at? There's array in my column.
Or in the worst case, your customers actually see that.
That's also pretty terrible. So I'm not saying you should write the RFC right now, Mark, but Monday on my desk will be pretty nice.
Change to type error. Okay. Well, sorry. As I say that, one sec, joking.
I know it's a
As
very
I
emotional
say
thing.
that, I'm one of those people who uses a global error handler, which promotes all errors, warnings, exceptions straight to error exceptions,
But everybody should do.
and
Yeah.
that is one of the things which has caught several times. For example, the Symfony HTTP Foundation and kernel, its methods, for example, get string. Their return type in dog blocks is string, but when you're using it from, say, query arguments, if you pass an array through it, it will pass you an array of strings or an array of integers and such. So you can imagine how that plays when it gets three calls down the stack and then suddenly hits an array somewhere, whilst a type check.
So everybody, you heard it first.
that's very
8.1.
weird.
That's ridiculous.
Indeed.
Yeah, why have a get string like method or whatever when it's not going to give you a string? That seems very
Yeah.
counterintuitive.
It is.
Yeah, it's just one of those odd quirks about using it. But I personally want it to throw a type exception rather than injecting some nonsense into it. So I'd be perfectly happy with that being a type error for everyone. It just means that you're most likely going to be able to 500 most people's websites by putting a pair of brackets in the URL.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at least PHP 8 is a bit saner. That's has a bit less. I don't know.
It feels a bit more grown up. I think.
Almost real language.
Yeah.
Oh,
I must say, I don't want to have anything to deal anymore with numeric strings for like 2 years because, like, I can't even this all of this nonsense. Like, no, I can't deal with it anymore.
It
That's
seems-
also still fucked up, right? numeric
Oh.
strings. In that,
Oh,
plenty
God.
of cases. Okay, yeah, that's definitely
Oh
yes.
god. Oh god. I mean, I don't know if you read the RFC that I wrote, which I'm glad it passed because it's insanity.
Yeah.
I couldn't
indeed.
even bring myself to read the RFC. That's how bad the situation was.
I mean, like the worst thing is, I was thinking it's like, oh, it's going to be easy. It's just I'm going to pick up like Andreas RFC, and it's going to be more or less a walk in the park, right? And then it was like, oh, the comment about Nikita. So, okay, do that more or less. Well, okay, more or less, that's relatively fine, right? You discover some weird bits here and there, and then you discover, because Nikita was surprised about that as well, is that you discover that numeric strings, when used as string offsets, will warn when they are not numeric, but will just do like an integer conversion anyways. Like it just completely random, and it's like, oh god, why are you doing this to me? It's and then it
It's
was
a
like,
feature though.
oh, it's a very very good feature, very good feature, the best feature. So, and then like with bitwise operations and like arithmetic operations, and you get
Right.
like some nonsense going about. So, it's like going through that. I discovered that you could do like bitwise operations on string, and so I don't remember exactly. So if it's numeric, it will convert it to a number. Then it will do the bitwise conversion numerically. Some of them. Otherwise, it will do it on each character. Like it will take, I think, the ASCII code of it, and it will do bitwise on each something like that. I don't even know anymore. So
But it's fixed, right?
yeah, for strings.
Cool.
That round of applause for making it a little bit more safe. We'll get there
Yay.
eventually. When
I mean,
PHP
hopefully-
checks itself out of the asylum, it will be a good day.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, PHP 9, which is like another 5 years away, possibly. We'll get rid of the last
Okay.
words. Find out.
This is petering out a bit, and I'm gonna stretch my legs. I'm actually just gonna stop the stream now. Mark, you missed it
Right.
earlier that I forgot to press the start recording button, and I've managed to screw up the settings, so I can't do a wasn't able to do a local recording. So the stream is the only thing that's being recorded. So bye bye everyone that's watching on the stream.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Bye.